Delighted to be here. And I arrived just in time to speak without having any context. It's always hard to come to a conference where people have been talking for 2 days, and then I come in at the end and I have no idea what has already been said for 2 days, and I'm not going to try and add some value blind. But you can see I'm still dressed for the beach. I was in Langkawi on Thursday in Malaysia and at Mahabalipuram last night for the World Surfing Federation first championship in India, which we sponsored from the government of Tamil Nadu back when I was finance minister. But I'm happy to be here for multiple reasons. I think the most proximate reason I'm happy to be here is that I was in Kodaikanal, very rare trip. Though I own some property there, I rarely go to Kodaikanal. Maybe once in 10 years or 5 years. And I was there last weekend to address a conference of gynecologists. And I was just in agony. Every second I went there, I kept telling my wife, this is the textbook case of the failure of public policy and urban planning. It was horrendous. It took an hour with 2 escort vehicles in front of me. It took an hour for me to get out of town. Imagine what it's like for the average person. And so I used to feel that way when I came to Ooty, and I don't come to Ooty very often for that reason. Now I feel like, relatively I feel a sigh of relief compared to how Kodaikanal is. I'm not saying it's a great thing, but I'm saying at least we're not that bad. But I think overall, this is a tragic development for those of us who grew up here. In my case, from I think 72 till about 83, I was here. Or 81, sorry. It brings tears to my eyes every time I come back. I think it is the most intimate example of the broad failure of the vision of democracy, the constitution, regulatory compliance, a kind of everybody participates economy, everybody shoulders responsibility that our founding fathers must have had. It fails everywhere. I'm not saying the rest of the state or the country is great. But to me personally, this hits home harder than at other places because I remember what it used to be like. And it's very tragic that though we have all kinds of building codes and guidelines and alleged constraints and classifications and all that stuff, in the end, we get what we see. So when I was, and I'd been away. I was away for many decades as an expatriate, and I didn't come up to Ooty, I think, maybe for about 20 years, between 83 and 2003 or so, and roughly thereabouts. And when I came back, I was flabbergasted, and so my visits have been infrequent since then. But I did come back after being elected MLA as part of the Assembly's Public Accounts Committee. And at that point, we came to review the audit paras of the CAG, including, among other things, the animal-human conflict avoidance programs that the government had funded, whether those had been run properly or not, including the reforestation, the example we saw here. I'll come back to this in a minute. And the SADP, which was once the Western Ghats Development Program, the Hill Area Development Program, something, all of it got merged together in the SADP. And there were a lot of things that hadn't been done right. And so the audit reports reflected that. And then as a part of the Assembly Accounts Committee, we came and reviewed a lot of those things. And at that time, I told myself that if we ever get to be elected and we get to form the government, that we would make some substantive efforts to start improving things. I would say in 2 years, we were able to do some things better than I expected. But I must also say that at the end of the day, there are huge limitations in the form of government and the administration that we run today. There is very little continuity, either in elected officials, which is the way it should be, or in long-term employees at the management level, like IAS officers and Group 1 and Group 2 TNPSC officers. They rotate every 2-3 years. The system of accountability that was designed in the Constitution that goes through things like the CAG audit and the PSC, broken down effectively. The role of the legislature as a body that holds the administration to account, effectively nullified through the anti-defection laws. And so, while it's a lot easier to get things done if you're in administration, and it's even more effective if you actually know what you're doing and have had administrative experience somewhere, and the kind of maximum leverage you get is when you're running finances. After all of that, I would say the system is not capable of really profound change or even kind of paradigm shift. That's why I think such conferences are so important. I think it falls upon civil society to lead the way. It's sad. It should not be that way, but it is that way. That I think, interested citizens, and especially as we become a more developed and more progressive country, that people who are of different disciplines but have the same intention should come together and at least set the guide path, the post on which government can then kind of either effectively, proactively act, or at least ask the question, why haven't you done something better than this? I think, let me digress for a minute about this presentation because I was very impressed by it. When we were students, I'll talk very specifically about myself because I don't want to cast aspersions on people like Johnny John, who are figures of authority when I was kind of Rascapellian. So, at least for people like me, we didn't suddenly feel the sense of ownership or responsibility. And I'm from this state. I'm local. My family's been in public life for 100 plus years, 120 years, 4 generations. And yet, I don't think I felt the kind of ownership that I saw in the students today. And so I really want to both commend all of you. It was fantastic work. I hope you'll continue to do this. Say that you are far, far more sophisticated and advanced and active citizens than I was. I won't say anything about Johnny at your age. And also to say, I don't know if there are any more students. You all look like very responsible students, so it's not relevant to you. But if there are any irresponsible students, like I used to be, there is hope, there is redemption. You can still end up as minister many decades later. Let me get back to what I think, conferences like these and this particular one should strive for, should aspire to. When I was minister, I'll just give you the complexity of trying to do these things in government. When I was minister for my previous portfolio, and incidentally, the current portfolio also has the same exact problem. There's way too much work to do with way too little continuity or institutional memory or, data or electronic records that are easy enough to search or sort or filter. And there are way too many or too few officers to deal with too many initiatives. So in my department, I think I have 7 or 8. In my current department, one department, I have about 7 or 8 different major initiatives and maybe 5 or 6 IAS officers. And in my opinion, that's not enough. In my previous role, I was responsible for finance, which also ran all the PSUs through the Bureau of Public Sector Enterprises, pensions, which is, I think, the biggest cost for any government, planning and development, which included the Planning Commission, also incidentally included the SADP, and then what used to be called personal administrative reforms, that we renamed Human Resource Management. That included the Public Service Commission for Employment, all the training institutes, the Lokayukta, the Department of Vigilance and Anti-Corruption, the Right to Information. The list is endless. It is not humanly possible for one person to actually administer at the public policy level this many things. I gave it a better shot, I think, than most people, because I used to be a senior managing director and ran a large global organization across tens of countries and thousands of employees. But that is incidentally that I happen to have that skill. So the nature of government and the construct of government is such that if you're expecting, granular understanding and execution based on internally generated visions and policies that are truly sophisticated and up to speed with the global benchmarks, it's a very unlikely outcome. And I say that apart from politics. So far, I've not talked about any particular party. I'm just saying all government, all design. The state of Tamil Nadu has about 75 to 80 million people, we think. We don't know, because there hasn't been a census since 2011. There should have been 121. Economy about 25 lakh crore, about 300 billion US dollars. And all of this, at least from a government level, is run by a government with 35 ministers, 234 MLAs, about 300 IAS officers, about 300 IPS officers. And of course, down the ranks, there are many, many, many lakhs of government employees. I don't think this is a good construct. And it is what it is. It's not scalable immediately, but at some point or the other, this will need to be rethought. I think devolution will have to be done in a major way from the union to the states, from the states to the local bodies. But for now, realistically, this is what we were able to do in 2 years in the SADP. We were able to expand the coverage area from the Western Ghats to the Eastern Ghats. We were able to announce some additional offices and staff. We were able to announce a digital mapping of the entire Ghat areas to be archived and maintained and tracked to see how things transition. We were able to get some additional investment for tribal hostels and schools. I'm trying to think, I did 2 or 3 more, but then, I read a 3-hour budget with some 100 and odd, 200 and odd announcements, so I've lost track. But this was realistically what I was able to do in 2 years as minister, at least announce, and some of it is in execution. Some of it will get done hopefully this year. That's the range of possibilities in a government. On the other hand, if there are concrete plans that are holistic, as I said to Johnny the first time he brought this up to me, was it a year ago, when I was still minister in charge of SADP, then I think it's much easier to hold government to account, because all you need is 1 or 2 people who can basically get this into the right hands, to the right ears. And the government is more than happy to take input from specialists, from professionals, especially if they're multidimensional, particularly if they're holistic, because then we don't have to worry about balancing the interests of A versus B and the political implications of particular actions. So I think I'll give you an example. The estates, right? So somebody talked about the estates and the economic consequences and why, in the colonial days. Many of these estates still function on government land. And tens of thousands of acres have been leased for sometimes 99 years, most commonly, sometimes for shorter periods. Many of these leases have already run off, right? There are tens of thousands of government land, tens of thousands of acres of government land, tens of thousands of acres that have already come off lease. And nobody has actually enforced the conclusion of the contract. Tens of thousands more are going to come in the next 2 to 3 years. So when I was finance minister, one of the things I did was I stopped all renewal of new leases, and I said I want a land lease policy in multi-directional land lease policy, from salt lands to estates to urban lands to school lands to whatever it is. If the state owns it, then the people own it, and is one of the greatest assets that the people own. In many cases, it has tremendous commercial value. In other cases, it has ecological value. In other cases, it is being done in a way that is against the notions of social justice or equitable access or equality that we espouse as a party, as a movement in the Dravidian movement. And therefore, what I want is a comprehensive review. Until there is a new land lease policy, we will not sign off on any leases, and we must have ceilings. The maximum lease we'll ever sign is 30 years, and those are for these kinds of categories. The rest will be below that, the rest will be below that, the rest will be below that. And first, we want a survey of all the lands and all the leases. Where do they stand now? Which ones have actually finished? For example, why should we not redeem these tens of thousands of acres? Especially many of them are not actually very profitable tea estates, and they don't belong to private entities, they belong to the people. So capitalist as I am, investment banker as I am, the contractual model being enforceable is the basis for good economics. So it's not that I'm trying to be a kind of, rabid communist when I say give the people back their land. So of course, we'll get ecological benefits. If we were to convert tens of thousands of acres back into rainforest or in different parts of the state, marshlands or whatever they're supposed to be, we'll get ecological benefit as well. And that's something we can pass on to our children, is as valuable as passing on wealth or a good economy. So, these kinds of things are quite complicated. I'm sorry if I am depressing you with the level of complexity or honesty or reality, but that's where it is. So I think this initiative of getting all of the specialists and the participants and the interests together, having dialogue coming up, and I told Johnny one more thing when the possibility was mooted, I said, it must be holistic and must come back with something that we can act upon as a government. We can basically take it and say, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the steps we should take, and these are the reasons for it, and we can go ahead and execute. I think you must have made progress. I see a lot of people here, and I heard while I was coming up from people. I hope this will be not a one-time effort. I hope this will be something that happens regularly. I hope it will be inclusive in the sense that whoever wants to participate, whoever wants to have a say, will be given an opportunity. It increases not just the quality of the output, but also the validity of the gathering. And I assure you, on behalf of the Chief Minister, of myself, the government, that we will try our best to act upon the inputs from concerned citizens and enlightened people and initiatives that are cohesive and collaborative like this one.